In this video, we'll take a closer look at parking issues, which has always been one of the main concerns regarding the future use of Hamptons. Local residents are very aware of the problems caused by parking for users of the centre, which has been a historic problem.
We've had to put up with the traffic, using the green to park on, using both sides of the roads to park on. We can't even walk on the path sometimes, and the noise that goes along with that early in the morning, especially late at night. And the green, which we were told when we moved in here was designated green space, but is constantly used as a car park. Our kids play on there. It's disgusting. 1,000, 250. 250 is still too much for a 98 space car park. It's chaos.
That road isn't capable of taking cars, never mind parking them.
As soon as the centres pull up for parking, they come back out, do a left, come right up to the end of Tidemand. The big events that are the bane of our life around here, and this is what we have to put up with the whole time. The traffic coming out, going round and round and round, and just using our private parking bays.
The estate roads are poorly designed and only have two narrow access roads, both of which don't meet the minimum requirements of building regulations for fire safety. It's a pre-existing problem which risks being made worse if Hamptons is to become Chelmsford Islamic Centre and Mosque, as CMS originally proposed. The building would be used for 5 daily prayers, including very early in the morning and late at night outside of public transport times, and for annual religious events which would attract higher numbers. The lack of parking and resulting noise and disturbance at unsocial hours risks harm to the residential amenity. Hamptons previously claimed the adjacent open space as their own for the purposes of overflow parking. If you've never witnessed this yourself, then all you need to do is take a stroll down Google Street View and see for yourself. As it turns out, Hamptons don't own this land. The area was designated public open space as part of the original planning consent for their development. Its use by Hamptons for parking has always been unlawful. The land itself belongs to the residential estate, and this has recently been clarified to CMS. And the new introduction of parking enforcement means that Hamptons will no longer be allowed to use this land for parking going forward. Whilst great news for the residents, it's only going to push the parking problems out to adjoining residential roads. The previous Marconi Club that this building replaced had 180 parking spaces. In their infinite wisdom, the council deemed that 98 spaces for the new building would be adequate. In any planning application or change of use, the council will specify the number of parking spaces needed, as required by the Essex parking standards and their own development policies. The number of parking spaces required is determined on the size and specific use of the building. In the planning consent for Hamptons, this was 1 parking space per 22 square metres of the building, based on a D2 use, which is assembly and leisure, and incidentally not multi-use or sui generis as the council now claim. If a change of use to a place of worship was to be submitted, this standard requires 1 space per 10 square metres, which for Hamptons would mean 241 spaces are needed, far in excess of the 98 that it currently has. This requirement alone would present a strong case for refusal of a change of use application to a place of worship. That is unless Chelmsford City Council continue to bend over backwards to bend the rules for CMS. You only have to look at other planning applications to see that non-compliance to these standards is a common reason for refusal of planning. Take this application submitted to Basildon Council last year to convert a pub into a cultural and community centre and place of worship. Planning permission was refused simply because it didn't provide the 1 space per 10 square metres required by this standard. Perhaps CMS, who have been assisted by a member of the planning committee, now realise that a change of use application to a place of worship would probably be refused on this basis, and may explain their reluctance to submit an application and why their plans for Hamptons now appear to have changed. No longer are they promoting a mosque, but instead a community sports and events hire venue. Whilst this sounds great to us, it's a far departure from the funding pages to their community who donated nearly £2.5 million on the promise of a new mosque. They would have every right to feel cheated that it appears their donations will now be used to prop up a commercial sports and leisure centre apparently with little use for worship. Or maybe they're just downplaying the scale of the worship element in order to pull the wool over the council's eyes and claim that it won't be the dominant use of Hamptons and planning permission isn't required, and take their chances by pushing the boundaries with a council who appear intent on finding any way to allow them to bypass planning regulations. Come July though, all COVID restrictions may be lifted, which could mean Hamptons is used for the festival of Eid al-Adha without any limitations on capacity. Until then, the true impact of parking restrictions can't be fully assessed. The fact remains that the current parking provision for Hamptons and the estate road design is barely adequate for a sports and leisure centre, let alone any additional or alternative use as a place of worship.